stick it on my Facebook as well.
There at least. Right.
That's me done.
It's Friday, 14th of June 2019, and today's extra special show we are joined by the First Lady of Bloomfield Road, Her Royal Highness Christine of Seddon, Advisor to the Board Mr Tim Fielding, Nick and me. We're here to discuss the latest goings on, and it's the fact it's been now 5 years since we got the words we all wanted to hear. Blackpool Football Club are now in the hands of a new owner. I'm John Aspinall, and this is Seasiders Podcast, episode 131, Simon Sadler's Tangerine Army.
Great tradition.
What's that, Tim? You're out of shot.
I know.
I can just about see you.
Sorry, I just want to see that Tangerine mic that you've hogged.
You want to move the camera around a bit, Nick, and
No,
get
it's
Tim
all
in?
Nah, don't bother. I've been told twice that I've got a face for radio, so...
Oh, your head's just stopping Tim from being in view.
Oh,
so yeah.
I'll
There you
move.
go. There you go.
Sorry, Sir Tom.
Right, sorry everyone on the live stream. We had a bit of a balls up yet again. Not my fault, obviously. YouTube's. Bit of a mouthful coming out, but yeah, there's obviously a lot to talk about today, and we're in an exalted guest today in Christine Seddon. Who are you again? what have you been? Have you been doing anything? Are you a Blackpool fan, are you?
Yeah,
Just
occasionally.
So yeah, Christine, it's great to have you. First time, as I said to Tim, it's long overdue. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to have you. Yeah, it is. Tim's here as well.
Evening.
The advisory board member now, are you?
Advisor to the board,
Advisor
I'm
to
told.
the board, right?
I'm
okay.
told.
And Nick's here as well. Good evening, Nick.
Good evening, everybody.
Right. Stressful time, the live stream. But Tim's brought us a little present. So Tim, do you want to show that to the camera?
Where's the camera behind?
It's kind of there, yeah. So
I wasn't allowed to bring the really good stuff. My missus wouldn't let me. But we've got a little bit of, I think, a day like yesterday, and particularly as the first podcast since the news, I think we need to crack one open, don't we?
Indeed.
That sounded so wrong, didn't
say.
it? That sounded so
Tim,
say
wrong.
something
the
else,
first
then.
podcast we've got ladies present, and he comes out with something like that.
Wait till you get home.
I know, so... Oh,
Hey, so
Great
it's
sound.
actually, it's not actually a sound effect. We did one with a
No,
sound effect, didn't we?
it's a
But Tim's
proper one. So you'll
Tim's brought the real
have to
thing.
pass glasses over and I'll fill them up one by
Come
one.
on, Nick, practice for your future career. Right, as Tim's pouring away, whenever we get a new guest, Christine, we always like to fire off a Q&A. Now,
Oh,
I've
heck.
written this down, so I'll just have to... Don't worry, you're very good at talking.
You noticed.
Not talking, being interviewed, I should say. That's quite...
I think some of the interviewers would actually say just talking.
The art of doing what we do on the radio is not actually letting them ask a question or close you down, isn't
That's
it?
absolutely
Just
right.
before we get going, Christine,
Yes.
the first time I kind of came... perhaps rephrase that one as well. First time I heard you, it was before the Oystons, actually, the real things kicked off with them. And I heard you on the radio in the car. You were just like a random caller, weren't you, on
Yeah.
Radio Lancashire?
Yeah.
And I remember first time I heard it, it's like, wow, she's really good. Yeah, it's like a lot better than we talk on here, all like gibberish. It was very,
Professional. is the
professional.
word
Yeah,
I'm
that's the
looking for,
word.
John.
Yeah, see, I couldn't even get that word out, could I?
Yeah.
So, yeah, how? Just my first kind of question is how how have you got so kind of eloquent? You speaking? Are you from a professional speaking background in any way, or
I wouldn't
is it
say
just
that.
come naturally to you?
Yeah, I think it just
Does
comes
it?
talking too much comes naturally to me. But I mean, from school, I was in the debating society.
right, there we
go.
go.
And I sing as well. So I sing with the choir, and I've
Right,
used to
so
sing
you know how to project your
solos.
voice and
That's
everything. They
correct.
teach you, don't they? Yeah.
Yes, and I know how to control the breathing so that nobody can jump in. I can just keep
Right,
going.
right. So it's,
That's the key.
so it's technically have been trained in some kind of way, haven't you?
In a way, although I have to say that ringing the radio and just sort of having a bit of a rant isn't really something you can be trained for.
Right.
But yeah, that was the infamous call, and that's kind of what got me involved with doing this kind of thing. And I was just so angry, as I think we all were at the time. Rang up Radio Lancashire and then was kept on hold and had to listen to Carl Oyston saying whatever he was saying. And then they came straight to me, and I was just incandescent at the time. So they just got both barrels, and I don't think I paused for breath at all.
Which particular incident was it?
It was just after Jose Riga had been sacked or
Right,
been removed
right.
or whatever. And yeah, I was well mad, as they say.
Incandescent, that's a
Yes,
good word, sort of thing
yeah,
Tim comes out
yeah.
with.
Yeah,
And
well, I was going to say I was listening at the time, and I made it my mission to find out who she was.
Who is this woman?
And get her on the BST committee.
It did. So it's all his fault. His fault.
Yeah,
altogether.
well,
But-
we all heard you. So, yeah.
That's right. And I think, to be honest, I'd actually been on TalkSport earlier in the day because I'd phoned them up because I was a serial radio phoner. And that was actually technically a better interview because I'd managed to get more points across. But I think the Radio Lancashire one I don't know, it just struck a chord with many people. In fact, I had quite a few people said to me afterwards, it was just so heartening to hear somebody saying exactly how I felt. And I managed to, I couldn't even tell you what I said, but I managed to get that across.
Right.
And I think that's what did it really. Because I know my Twitter went sort of crazy and I was like, well, what's going on?
We had 3
What's
followers before.
Yeah, exactly.
Family members and stuff.
I got in trouble, by the way, as well, because I got told by Kevin, who was the secretary of BST at the time, Tim, this is not the way we recruit committee members. I said, I don't care.
So yeah, it was.
The
Yeah,
rest
it was.
is history, as they say.
Yeah. So Tim kind of recruited you just to come on the committee, did he? And
Well, to be a spokesperson at first, and then I got co-opted. So I was co-opted onto the committee at that point, and then I don't know.
I think
Now
wasn't your first committee meeting my last?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
We sort of passed in the doorway, I think.
Because I had to we had to have a call an emergency meeting when I handed my resignation
Yeah.
in.
for reasons we won't go into.
We don't need to go with this in the past. But,
So Tim, how did you track Christine down?
I can't remember now. I think I did it through Twitter, and I said, somebody didn't. A was find out who it was, and then it's a case of just messaged you through Twitter. I think,
Yeah,
didn't I? And said, "Can I have
it
your
was,
number?" And we had a chat, and I invited her to come down and join the group.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Christine, we'll just go delve into a bit of your past as we always do with new guests. Nothing personal, don't worry.
Okay.
So how did you become a Blackpool fan initially? We've all got our little tales of how it's happened.
Yeah.
Generally family members. So what's your particular
Yeah,
story?
It's my family, the whole family are Tangerine. Although my dad actually was more of a rugby man, but my mum was absolutely, a mad Blackpool fan. Famously went to the '53 Cup final on the back of her brother's motorbike. I've told this story so many times, but that's how it was. And I've got an older brother that a lot of people know, Pete Seddon. And he was ever so good with his kid sister, and he used to drag me along to the games. And the rest is history, I think.
I'm just wondering if Pete's, because my mum, as I was telling you off air, my mum knew quite a few of the blokes who worked at the land registry. 'Cause my dad was there as well, and one of them famously said he went down to see Owen. I don't know if it was either Pete or one of the others, and he said, I love this club more than my wife, so you better get it sorted. So I'm just wondering if it's Pete. I'll ask her anyway, and I'll let you know. Is that the kind of thing he'd come out with? I love this football club more than my wife, so I want you to get it all sorted. Yeah, so I'll ask her anyway. I'll see what it was. Right, so how long have you been a fan, Christine?
Well, I was 5 when I went to my first game, I can't really remember much about it, if I'm honest.
Not two, like the Uber fan
no,
who
not
shall
two.
know be really.
I was 5. And I'm 56 now, so.
Right, so yeah, it's been a long old slog
it
then.
It certainly has indeed, yes.
So we've talked about how you got involved in BST, so we'll just skip that. Where was your favourite place to sit at Bloomfield old and new?
Old and new.
Yeah.
I used to go on the cop until the murder, which was obviously horrendous, and so my mum wouldn't let me go on there anymore.
Can you remember that day? Were you there?
Vaguely. Again, I was quite young, so stories get a bit mixed up in your head, don't they? So then I spent a lot of the time in either the old South Paddock and the old South Stand.
Were you in the Surge Squad?
No.
Oh, you missed out.
And then when the new stands were built, we went in the north, and then of course got moved back to the south for a while. And my mum, because my mum lived Jimmy Armfield, she wanted to stay in the south, so then the family kind of split up a bit. Some were in the north, some were in the south, and I stayed in the south right up to May 2015, which was my last game, the Huddersfield game. But going back, I will be back in the north.
Right.
But not blocks A, B or C.
You're not going in with the muckers then?
I don't think they'd have me.
But you're their hero or heroine. What do they call it, Tim?
Queenie.
Queenie. Do they all like bow as you
I don't know about that.
throw petals on the seats before you sit down? That's, I think you deserve it. Your sterling work. I've just a bit of a curveball here. Have you ever sat down? I know, because Carl's obviously had famous names. He's good for picking out names for people, hasn't he? So Carl's giving you your name. I'm sure you know it is your nickname. Have you ever sat in a room with either Carl or Owen and had a one-to-one dialogue with them and just trying to get your point across to?
Never.
Right, that's surprising, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know. The only time that
Yeah.
I've ever addressed Owen was at the Hilton meeting, but
Right.
obviously that was in public, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Other than that, no. No,
So you'd
not
like
at
to
all.
think they would have, well, any kind of sane person would have wanted to have a sit down and a one-to-one, wouldn't they?
I'd
Right.
have been happy to do that.
That kind of
but
surprises me, and it doesn't, like, at the same time. Right, that's...
No. It's strange, isn't it?
So I was going to say, what did you think of them? So I'll skip on.
Skip that one.
Yeah, I'll skip on. Right, most memorable home game and why?
Oh, crikey.
We'll normally take a playoff, take the playoffs out of the equation, 'cause
Yeah,
it's a bit
'cause
sort of
they are.
predictable, isn't it? And
They are.
anything that sticks out in your mind.
Well, to be honest, now it's going to be that Huddersfield game that was abandoned because it was so significant. It was my mum's very last game,
Right.
and we knew it was going to be a last game because of her age and the dementia that she had, and we weren't renewing the tickets. So that was pretty emotional as well. But I probably shouldn't say this, but I was really impressed with the way that day went, the whole protest thing, and the way that the pitch occupation took place. Having a man bombing around on a mobility scooter, people sort of go, oh, all these thugs and whatever, but it simply wasn't like that. It was a very British thing, I thought, and great,
It's like Benny
humorous.
Hill-esque almost,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
It actually was. And I don't know, I just had this feeling there that this was the start of something important.
Yeah.
That's a standout game for
I
me.
mean, Sam Oyston closing the blinds as well to try and stop the hordes. That was like a Benny Hill moment, wasn't it? What was he thinking? This will stop him.
But it was, it's part of our history, isn't it? So we can't brush it under the carpet.
Sort of same question, away game. So I suppose that'll be kind of focusing on the football, won't it? We can have Wembley as well, or like any.
Actually, Preston away when we won 2-1, and Brett got the last minute winner. And because to be honest, our squad then it was held together with sticky back plastic and pieces of string, I think. And it was just so unexpected. And I remember the Blackpool fans that day were amazing. We just never shut up. In fact, I had a blood blister on my hand from clapping and so much.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. I actually did. That's how sad I am. That just stands out,
Right.
really. It was an amazing game.
My memory of that game is I lived in London at the time, and I had to work overtime at the weekend. I had no option. I remember being really annoyed And I can still remember where I was, like listening to it on the radio.
Yeah.
It's just like in this crappy office building. It was kind of bittersweet 'cause it was like, yes, we beat them finally, and it's like, oh, I couldn't be there. So.
In fact, actually, just to add to that, I met Brett a couple of weeks later because a company that I used to use, because I worked at the Hilton, I'd gone to see them because I was placing a big order, and Brett had used to work for them when he was a youngster, and he was there. So they sort of went, "Oh, there's somebody here that you might want to meet," and it was like, "Oh, it's Brett Ormerod." And if anybody had told me that, some years later I'd have been helping to organise his testimonial, I'd have been like, "You're mad," but there you go. That's.
Right, excellent. Right, that's a bit of a delve into Christine's psyche and history there. So, right, let's move on now to the... Oh, actually, what have I put? Sorry, I've missed one out at the end.
Oh.
Right, finally, wrapping things up, which will nicely segue onto the main topic of conversation this evening. What are your hopes and dreams for the future of BFC? Try to put this as succinctly as you possibly can.
Well,
I think we're almost at the dream
I think
stage,
we are at the
yeah.
dream stage, and we've already seen what can happen when a club starts to liaise with its fans properly and engage with its fans properly. I think they've made a really good start, and hopefully Simon Sadler will be of the same outlook, because I really truly believe that there's no limit to what you can do and what you can achieve if you're all pulling in the same direction. We've already seen what can happen when things go wrong and what an impact it can have on everybody. So, turn it on its head, and this is all going to be extremely positive now, and I hope will be a blueprint for other clubs as well.
Right. I pressed that a bit early, but yeah, we'll...
Okay.
Right, so that concludes the Q&A round. Let's move on to the main topic of the topic this evening, the main conversation topic, which is Simon Sadler's bought Blackpool, Nick. So what was your thoughts when this piece of news came out?
Oh, well, when we heard the news during the week, for me the biggest news was, the 4 new mowers that we're getting. That was phenomenal. 12-month rolling contract.
No pun intended on the rolling.
No, but joking aside, you never know with new owners, do you? But for me, I think it's as good as you could hope for. It's a guy who's a Blackpool fan, so he's not just coming at it from the business point of view. He understands what it is to be a fan as well, which I think for an owner of a football club, for me, that's all you can ask for. So hopefully, exciting times ahead.
Tim, what do you think?
Well, I found out a little earlier than everybody else, and had to sit in my office.
How was that? How did you?
Oh yeah, I was
going to
say you've wheeled your way in again, haven't you, at the top table?
Well, Simon rang me about 1 o'clock and said, "I'm the new owner of Blackpool Football Club, but you can't say anything." So I was like, sat at my desk for the next 2 hours. Couldn't work.
What day was this on?
This was yes,
on the
this
day.
This is
On the day.
yesterday,
Right.
at 1 o'clock or ish. So he rang me to tell me, and then Paul Cooper rang me about 3, and just to thank me for helping on the board over the last 3 or 4 months. And I said, "Oh, when's it going live?" Because obviously Simon's told me obviously not to say anything, and I literally sat in my office and didn't speak to anybody. And he said, "Oh, Matt Scrafton's just tweeted about it now, so it's common knowledge." So because obviously there's basically a coordinated press release going out, because they wanted to make sure that it hit all the media and basically and everybody got to find out at the same time, which is the right way to do it. So it was quite an emotional moment, really, because what I didn't realise, even when Simon and Paul had spoken to me the first time, was that the 20% issue had been resolved as well. So when after I got off the phone to Paul, I looked at his press release and I thought he's made a spelling mistake with the 96.2% rather than 76.2. So I rang him back and said, "Is there a mistake in the press release, or is that right?" And he said, no, it's right. And that's the reason why things have perhaps taken a little bit longer than we would have ideally thought, because we had to resolve that issue as well. So that was like the icing on the cake, really, wasn't it, for everybody?
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I think that's as important as who the new owner is, because a lot of people were waiting and wondering, will there still be some involvement in some way? and it just they're completely gone. So it's a total fresh start, and I think that's massively important.
So Tim, just for kind of layperson, for people like myself, as I was like, we're in the Thatch yesterday, weren't they? And I was just trying to get my head around this 20% situation. So can you kind of dull it down for people who might not understand what it is?
So keeping it as simple as possible. When we had the hearing on the 6th of November 2017, the final order that was made by Marcus Smith said, because this is the way it normally happens.
Peace be upon him.
It's the way it happens with these judgments, is that the majority owner is ordered to buy out the minority owner. So the order effectively says that, and there's three defendants, there's Owen, Carl and what was Suggester, they have to buy out Valeri's 20% share for £31.16 million plus interest plus costs, etc., etc. But once all that money was paid, in theory, if that ever happened, then the 20% shares that Valeri held would have reverted back to one or more of Owen, Carl and Suggester, and we would assume Owen. So that's where it's the icing on the cake to know that Paul Cooper has been able to not just deliver a new owner of the type that we've spoken about, who's obviously got very, very strong Blackpool roots, is a Blackpool fan, is wealthy, and who, based on what we've heard so far, is committed to Blackpool for the long term. But he's also managed to remove that niggling concern that what if that all that money gets repaid at some point, and do we then have a scenario that nobody really wants, which is an oyster minority stake in the club, and that issue's been removed, and from my perspective, I'm sure everybody else's perspective, it just gives us that clean start, and we've got the blank piece of paper, we've got the hopefully the will and the desire to make Blackpool Football Club what we all want it to be, and that's best under the ownership of one person, subject to the few minority shares that exist. But that's better under the ownership of one person rather than having more than one person potentially hanging around. And it would have been difficult for Valeri as well, because he's got his issues with the EFL, and he's also got the issue that he would have been babysitting those shares until he'd collected all his debt in, and that's just not ideal. Not ideal for a new owner, and not ideal for him, or indeed, for us.
I mean, I kind of feel sorry for him in a way, because he's ultimately the reason why we're standing here talking about this, isn't he? And I'd love to have him involved in some capacity in the future. I mean, he's such a hero, isn't he?
He is, and I suppose it's not necessarily ruled out, is it? Potentially, it could be something that happens at some point in the future when the current issues are resolved. Like Tim says, he's a bit to be getting on with in the meantime, hasn't he? So, but I think for me, like Tim said, we've got a guy who's a Blackpool fan. He's wealthy.
He's got a Tangerine yacht.
It's exciting times ahead.
He's got a Tangerine yacht.
Is he really? Nice.
See, Christine, you don't know everything, do you? Right, so Christine, moving on to you. Obviously, you've been so emotionally involved, and you've been instrumental in BST and getting us to where we are. So, how did you feel when you read that news, and what was your emotions at the time when you finally thought?
Obviously, initially, like everybody else, just the sheer euphoria. And yes, the standout line for me too was this 96.2%. But I felt all the way through that His Holiness at the start, he
peace be upon him.
Absolutely, he fully understood the importance of the fans in all of this. He just got it, and those of us who went to the court regularly, you just got that sense that he realised that whatever ruling he made was going to have to try and protect that in some way. I also got that feeling from the receiver, and I think he's played an absolute blinder here.
To use the analogy, football analogy, box to box administrator.
So that really inspires me. That I just think that there are good guys out there. There are people out there who, in this cynical old world, understand that there are more important things than money. And the way it's turned out is just, you know, if we'd written it ourselves, it couldn't have been any better, could it? So just fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. So let's move on to Simon Sadler. Had anyone heard of him before? All this kind of, obviously, Tim, you're probably might have been privy, you know, the circles you operate.
I actually know Brett Geraghty quite well. Went to school together. He was a couple of years.
Is he on the board as well? Is he on the board?
Yeah, he's basically he and Simon are best friends. Simon's godfather to one of Brett's children, from what I understand. But I know Brett quite well from school, and then he's a lawyer. He started off in private practice, so
he might get you a job.
When I was just newly qualified, I'm sort of going back nearly 25, 30 years. Brett was like 2 years behind me, and he started his training in Blackpool at roughly the same time. So we used to see each other a lot at court and things, and see he lives in Poulton as well, where I live. So and I used to catch up with him sometimes, walking around Cotton Hall, because his son used to play for Poulton at one stage. And even this quite recently, we'd walk around with our dogs, and his lad was kicking the ball about, and he'd talk about his friend in Hong Kong who maybe one day might be the owner of Blackpool Football Club, and obviously...
What, just joshing?
Well, no, I mean, I knew he was serious about it, but of course, you know, you're talking in 2014, 2015, you don't necessarily think the Oyston's ever going to go anywhere, and then obviously as things move into 2017, Brett would still say he's still there, and he's still watching, and he's played just like the car has. He's played a blinder as regards just getting on with doing what you need to do, and you know, it didn't surprise me when I got that call to say that he'd got it, because we'd had quite a few chats in February and March when the process first opened, and he was asking all sorts of questions about, you know, how the land lay over here, and you know, getting into the nuances and the detail that you need to know as a person who's thinking of bidding for a football club, and he most certainly has, from my perspective, has come at it from the right angle. He talks about the things that we at BST believe are very, very important, which is the links with the community and the links with the youth, and making sure that the structure's right. You know, there's not a quick fix here, and I think as fans we've got to be prepared for the fact that there is going to be a game plan, and no doubt he'll tell everybody about it when he comes over to England, and but that game plan will be structured, it'll be measured, and it'll be about making sure that Blackpool is structurally sound for the long term.
Measured progress, even as someone.
To coin a phrase.
Do you think he'll be over a lot for games, or it'll just be initially and then?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, that's one for him to answer in a couple of weeks. But you know, I'm glad that he's kept the interim board together at the moment. I think in this transition period, you know, we're doing things that were part way through that need doing for the start of the season. You know, and it's, you know, it's not just Michael and Ben, the people that they brought in to help them are also doing great jobs. You know, you've seen that in relation to the delivery of the sponsor on the shirt. We're now looking at we're trying to get things sorted at the training ground. We're trying to get the proper provision for away fans in the East. I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised when they come back in whether it's to the Blackburn friendly game or to the first home game of the season in August, that they will see changes. It won't be perfect, because this is, I keep saying,
there's a lot to sort out, isn't there?
It's for me, it's the oil tanker, and it's turning around the oil tanker. You don't turn around an oil tanker in a day. It's a project, and the project will take time to deliver. But that, to a certain degree, that's the exciting bit. You know, if everything happens straight away, for me, it doesn't mean quite as much. I think we need to see improvement upon improvement on and off the pitch. And if we keep seeing that, if every time you come to Bloomfield Road, you see one improvement, that's what we want. And eventually we will get the club that we all want. And that's going to take, it's a 5-year, if not a 10-year project, I think.
I was going to say the Iranians had a good go at that yesterday, didn't they? Try to turn around the oil tanker pretty quick. Anyway, I digress.
Let's hope they're not listening.
Yeah. Right, swiftly moving on. So, the new board, Tim. Well, so there's just been one change, hasn't there, on the board, and that's his Simon's pal.
Simon and Brett are both joined the board. At the moment, Michael, Ben, and Ian all stay.
Is that permanently or is that temporary?
I think that's for discussion when Simon comes over. That's not something I'm really party to. I mean, I would like to see what we've seen is a degree of professionalism in the boardroom, and I'm not particularly talking about myself. It's just been great to see it, to be honest, from my perspective. But we've seen a level of professionalism in the boardroom that I would like to see continue. And I think once Simon meets Ben and Michael, because of course he hasn't met them.
I was about to say, has he actually been over?
Oh no! So to be fair, no, he has. He came over. I think it's got reported in the mail for the Peterborough game.
Yeah.
So he has met. But I think the best one in the world, you need to spend time with people, don't you? And I think it was a flying visit. So once he comes over, which I'm sure he will be doing in the near future, you can sit down, get to know them properly, and I'm undoubtedly will have had numerous telephone discussions with them, and then I'm sure he'll also want to speak to the fans and to fans groups, and then he'll make his own mind up, no doubt, as regards what direction things take. But on a personal level, it's been great, and you got people with a ridiculous amount of experience, and it's all been put to fantastic use for the benefit of our football club.
And again, they're showing that understanding that I was talking about from the judge and the receiver. I think Michael and Ben have got that as well. They totally understand where we've been, where we're at now, and where we need to go. And we need that. We definitely need that.
Right. So just going around the room then, was he everyone's preferred option? Nick, did you have any preference?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because you don't necessarily know for definite who else was involved.
Yeah.
And I think for me, from what we'd heard, it was the number one choice. Like I've said, he's a Blackpool fan, so you get it from both sides. He understands what it means. So yeah, absolutely the right choice for me. Definitely.
I wasn't too keen on this. What was this Tay guy? What was his
Henry
Tay?
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, again, you look at it, and
the
there was a lot supposedly being promised, and you just don't know, do you? Whether that would have come to fruition or not. I think for me, we've got someone who's going to focus solely on the football club, and that's massively important.
Yeah. So Tim, has plans been put in place by the interim board to kind of do these projects like the training ground upgrade, the away fans facilities? Has sort of very small plans been put in place in lieu of them sort of taking the second step once the club's been taken over?
Yeah, well, I mean, Terry was quite, just dealing with the training ground first, Terry was actually very keen on, because I think we looked at some other provision elsewhere, but he was actually quite keen to stay at Squires Gate because the pitches are actually good. The big problem we had at Squires Gate was that there was no water, and so as soon as you had a few days without any rain, the pitches were unplayable.
Centre of excellence.
It's embarrassing.
So the water's back down there, which is good. There's a proper tractor style mower there, so that the young lad doesn't have to walk up and down those pitches in the way he was having to do every single day.
What? What with the hand mower?
Hand mower, yeah. And then what we're looking at now, obviously, is provision for the players. So we've got a couple of irons in the fire there as regards what we're going to do. Because of course, at the moment, there's nothing for them, and that's going to be the priority, and also to sort the issues out in the east, because there's, as most people know, the first 5 rows have been have netted off. And
what's the reasoning behind that?
It's just there's I mean, that stand's been there now for 9 years, hasn't it? And the lower sections are more weathered than the upper sections. So just from a safety perspective, the structural engineer has said fence
People might
those
fall
off.
through them if.
I don't. I mean, when you
Last one.
talk about, I mean, the risk is that the wood there is past the period that it should be used for. So we've got to replace it. It's in hand, and but obviously it's a case of timing those works as quickly as possible, because until we get the fixtures out on Thursday, we don't know. We could theoretically have Sunderland at home, the opening game of the season, and we might want to make sure that stands as full as it can be it with Blackpool fans or be it with giving both sides to Sunderland. We don't know. It will depend on our ticket sales. I'd like to think that we're only going to give them 2,500 tickets because we're going to fill the rest. But obviously what we don't want, if you've got the first 5 rows out in each side, then you're probably going to knock I don't know, I'm guessing 1,000, if not 1,500 off the gate, which doesn't make any economic sense. So hopefully we're going to have a little bit more time to work with than that, but obviously we'll know a bit more on Thursday.
Just going back on something you've just said then, the fixture list. First time I've been looking forward to the fixtures for 5 years. Isn't it amazing, isn't it?
It actually is. It's like, oh my goodness, we're back
Things you
to
take
this
for
again.
granted.
Here we go on Boxing Day is the
Yeah.
first one you look at.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
New Year's Day, Boxing Day, first game.
Last game.
Last game.
Yeah.
I'm quite looking forward to a couple of away. I've quite fancy going to Lincoln this year and having a stop over there because it's quite nice over there.
Lincoln?
Yeah, no, it's but somewhere you can have a good weekend.
How
And
middle class, eh? What, so you can see the cathedral and go punting down the river?
I'm more interested in the pubs.
I want something like Bolton away first game. It's a good time to play them as well, isn't it? You know, like the fact that they're kind of in a bit of a low ebb themselves.
Well, yeah, in the process of being taken over as well, aren't they? I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
They've got
Same
preferred
as
bidder
Seasiders.
now, haven't they? I think.
Yeah.
Wonder if it's Owen.
Fan since the age of 2. Just going back to you mentioned Terry Mack. Has he been given a new contract this week, or was that internet gossip?
The short answer is I don't know. So what I've tended to do quite recently is just focus on specific projects, because what I can't be there all day every day.
Yeah.
So the very much Michael and Ben deal with the players and the day-to-day running the football club between them, and then Ian and I come in on board meetings, and then being local, I can say I'm happy to do that project and I'm happy to take that away and deal with that.
Yeah.
And I let them get on with it. And to a certain degree, I think it's better that way, because I think when you when you get involved in too many things, you know, I've got a day job to do at the end of the day as well as. So I've sort of focused my energies on helping with the training ground, helping with the East. Obviously, before that, I helped sort out the new scoreboard and various things in the ground, like the hospitality provision at the start and things like that when I was there a little bit more. But yeah, you've got to get the balance right, and of course fan engagement as well. So that takes up a fair amount of my time as well.
Yeah.
Dealing with, you know, I've just dealt with I'm sure we're going to come on to discuss it, but I've just dealt with the appointment to the SLO with Michael, and that was fairly time consuming. We did the fans forum before that, and also all the interviews and appearances on radio and doing things like this, which is great.
Yeah.
So so at some point I have to earn a few quid for at work as well, and and try and spend some time at home.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting though, isn't it? Because we're hopefully going to have a proper pre-season, signing players, all the things that a normal football club does. And then it'll be interesting to see how he does, because obviously the end of last season, let's be honest, you know, he kind of inherited the role because of what happened with Gary Bowyer, and the football at home wasn't great, but we had a terrible pitch, and we're going to have a very good pitch by the look of your pictures so far, Tim. And if we do have a decent squad, it's going to be interesting to see how we, particularly at home, I think, if we can play that kind of more attacking, expansive style of football that you want to see. You know, if he can do that, because I think away from home, we were probably better away from home than at home, weren't we?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, quite a few went to Bradford, didn't they, and saw a very good performance. Luton, we were arguably better than that, and I thought we played fairly well, particularly in the second half against Accrington. But so I've said it a few times now. Probably the biggest disappointment was that we never really brought that type of performance to a home game. Probably Fleetwood was the closest we got to it. But so I think some people have a rather jaundiced view as the style of football we play, which hopefully once we've got a decent pitch at home and maybe with a few good tactical additions. I mean, we've got Jimmy Ryan back hopefully next year if he signs on again, and we can I'd like to see him play because apparently we saw him literally for the last game and I think he wasn't really match fit at that point anyway.
Still made a difference though, didn't he, when he came on?
Yeah, so
you could tell.
Yeah. It's important. I think hopefully we're going to be able to keep hold of our better players who have been looked at by other clubs, and we can with a few good additions. And hopefully some good season ticket sales, which means that there's going to be a rocking atmosphere in the ground. We can, people are going to want to come here and going to want to play football, hopefully in a way that's going to entertain everybody as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely key for home games. You want it to be entertaining, don't you? So you've got your core season ticket holders, but you could be putting another 2,000 on that every week with entertaining football.
Yeah, and there's efforts being made as well to make things more professional for the players as they come in, stay at the changing rooms and all of that, so that they actually feel that they're part of something important. And because, they must have wondered what the heck they'd come to.
What's it actually like in the changing rooms? Are they pretty naff? Or?
A bit Sunday League.
Are they? Are they really?
Yeah.
You'd expect that to be reasonably modern, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't expect anything to be reasonably modern after what they've been through, but it's getting there, and like Tim says, it's going to take time to put all these things right. But the will is there, and hopefully the investment now will be there. So sky's the limit.
Yep. Right. So I went out to Twitter and various of the social media channels, asking the fans to do a bit Q&A. So Tim's just having another drink of the bottle. I've down mine.
You poured yourself one without pouring me one.
Well, you're on one of your monologues.
You can't stop me when I get going.
What was that jaundice one? What was that jaundice comment you made? I always come up with
a jaundiced view of the way we play football.
Delicious irony, and I pick up these like phrases he comes out with.
Nuances is one of the latest ones.
What was the synergies one that I was like listening to the radio and he came out with this fantastic synergies. That was it. I was like, I'll add that one in my little notebook. So yeah, I've been doing some fantastic synergies with the fans on Twitter, and I've been doing a Q&A. So we've got some questions coming in. So we'll go through them. Probably best for Tim and Christine to answer. We can pop in every now and then, Nick, if we've got anything to add. So the first one is actually coming for you, Tim, from Danny Morgan. Assuming you've spoken to him, which you have, how does Sadler come across as a bloke? How much communication should we expect from him in the coming weeks and months?
Right.
I'll have to try and rattle through these.
Yeah. I mean, from my discussions with him, obviously he's one of us. He's brought up in Blackpool. I think he was on the deck chairs when he was a young lad. That's where Brett met him.
Which the council have sold off, those deck chairs. Anyway.
And as I said, he's obviously a very driven individual. You don't get to where he is and have the type of clout that he obviously has in the Far East without being very driven and very smart. He's measured. He won't rush into decisions. I think everything he'll do, he will have thought through from every single angle. And for me, that's exactly what I want from a new owner.
Excellent. Right, this one's for you, Christine, from Owen Gladius. This is Phil. I don't know if you know him. Yeah, Phil said, do you think BST are too close to the club and are in danger of losing your independence?
No, I don't think that at all. I understand where he's coming from, and I know there's been lots of comments, and I'll say from the outset that I don't believe for a minute that anybody's actually having a go at me personally. I understand the principle of what they're saying, because at the moment I am working for the hotel, not the football club, but I'm in the same
have you
building.
got a job there?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
No, I've just taken a hotel consultant thing, so I was asked to come in and... Because again, there was no infrastructure.
That's your background, isn't it?
36 years for Hilton, so yes.
I was going to say man and boy, but man and girl.
Yes, and yeah, I wasn't a cleaner. I know some people like to say she's just a cleaner, but I was never a cleaner. However, so yeah, I've gone in and I'm just trying to do the best that I can.
Right, yeah. Congratulations.
Dream job. I was made redundant last year, you see, because Hilton was sold off, and I didn't want to work for the company that had taken over. So I was very much enjoying having my time off. Came at the right time because of all that was happening with BST, because that's almost a full-time role. But this came up, and I was getting to the point that I needed to get back to work, so I've gone to do this. Which
So what's going to be your role there then?
well, as it's hotel support at the moment, because again there was quite a young team in place, and lots of gaps. So it's the lack of knowledge and experience. So that's what I've gone in. The old trout's gone in to help them out.
Brilliant. So we're getting free tickets from here, free hotel rooms from there. Happy days.
I know,
Everyone's a
result.
winner. Oh, that's brilliant news, Christine.
So I understand the concerns of the possible conflict of interest, that as BST we are there definitely to challenge if required, and would that then put me in a difficult position because I could end up having to challenge my employer? Totally get that, but at the same time, BST is a completely democratic organisation. I am not the only person on the committee, and I don't make the decisions. Everything is voted on. The members make policy decisions, and then the committee, carry things out and make votes along the way. So if there was anything that was an issue, I could recuse myself from that. I wouldn't have
What, yourself?
recuse.
Recuse.
Add that into your book.
I'm claiming I gave her that word at the meeting.
Yeah, there you go. I rest my case.
I don't know whether she's going to admit that, but
Debating society, do you mind?
oh yeah, go on, I'll let you off then.
So I actually don't think that there is a problem, but again, we have got elections coming up, and
We can always get you out if we want, don't we?
Well, that's exactly right.
Seddon out.
So having sack
Oh,
the
the
board
irony.
and get him out.
Those placards might still have some use yet. Phil, I know where you can get some placards going cheap, mate.
Still got some in my garage. So it's up to the members. I do intend to stand again for the committee this time round. I'll say that now. I've had many people have actually, far more I think, have commented and said, please don't give up, which is very nice, than have said, oh, actually, you shouldn't be doing this anymore. So it's...
I can't believe people even say that, to be honest. I mean, it's,
Well,
with everything you've done, and people can say...
Let's say, I think we have to depersonalise it, though. So if it wasn't me, it could be somebody in the future that's on the committee that works for the club, and a situation could arise. So I get where they're coming from, but I do think we've got
It's
enough
actually
safeguards
it's a separate
in place.
business, though, isn't it? It's not Blackpool Football Club or...
Yeah, but it's the same owner. So,
right, I suppose, yeah.
if Simon Sadler
Yeah.
does something that the fans don't like and BST have to challenge it,
Yeah.
and he was my employer, I see that. I do actually see that. But as I say, I do feel that we've got enough safeguards in place for it not to impact on BST.
Plus, there's plenty of hotels in Blackpool if you want to get into them. Right, moving swiftly on. Gareth White says, in your opinions, it's a bit of a low font this, and it's going to be nice to... What should Simon Sadler's priorities be for Blackpool FC after becoming majority owner? Ground maintenance or training facilities, etc. Nick, go on there. You can come in on this one. What do you think his priorities are?
I think it's a lot of what Tim's just talked about, the stuff that's already ongoing. Getting the training ground fit for purpose, getting the stadium up to scratch, and obviously getting a squad together for next season that can hopefully
That's
compete.
ultimately what we're all really, really interested in, aren't we?
Yeah.
We want a good team playing good football. We want successful football.
Yeah.
For me, that
Of course we do.
Yeah.
Right. Alan Duckworth says, what if it's in relation to Jack? Have you had any contact with Valeri since the announcement of new owners? And is he going to make a statement? So, Tim or Christine?
No, not yet. It is actually my intention to.
Have
to-
you actually
to write
spoken to him in face to face, or have you?
Oh, I've spoken to Valeri face to face
Right, yeah.
in the courtrooms and things like
Right.
that. And
So you've got kind of a relationship with him.
oh yes, yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And yes, it is my intention to write to him, even if it's just to say thank you and goodbye.
He should come to a game or something.
Oh,
though,
absolutely.
shouldn't he?
I honestly think that something
think
we'll be able to arrange something at some point. In fact, I want the Clifford Chance people to come and
Well,
the receiver to come.
I emailed them yesterday just to
Right.
thank them for their part and everything, and they are planning to come up to a game next season.
Great.
I said the same to Casper's. I've not got Valeri's direct email, and Casper's is keen to come over as well. So
Brilliant.
I think the dust needs to settle. I think Simon needs to assert his ownership of the club
Yeah.
first. But I think there will be an appropriate point, I think, where we can actually have catch up with them, because a lot of them have become friends, even on the Clifford Chance team, and they bought into what we were trying to do in the end.
They did.
And it was a team effort, and so there does need to be that celebration at some point, and a chance just to see each other perhaps in a different light, and when you're not in a courtroom and
Get them
just
in the
chill out a bit.
Excelsior.
Yeah.
We should get Valeri to the Excelsior. That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Love it.
He'd go. I think he'd go. But I love that when the Clifford Chance guys during the summer of the court case, and they used to go home on the tube, and then they'd get straight onto AVFTT and read our Basil Robbie's notes, and it's just like, what?
But they loved it, didn't they?
They did.
They said
loved
the
it.
court reports were fantastic,
Yeah.
and even when you're in court, which you're not officially meant to do it, but you were in court, and we were sat at the back, and you could sit forward, and both sides, there was the Oyston side and the Bellicon side, both had AVFTT open on their laptops.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yes, they did, and they loved, what was it, Tangerine Night's bullshit bingo.
Yeah.
Sorry. Funny.
The first swear comes from Chris.
Sorry.
Who'd have thought it?
It was a quote. It was a quote.
Grammar school girl.
I'm going to blackball her now in those committee elections because of that. I'm joking. Right, moving on. Jordan Spears says, "Hi guys, I'm a Blackpool fan from Scotland, not been for a while because of all the ocean stuff. Can anyone Nick, this is an obvious one for you. Can anyone recommend good pubs
Hotel?
near the ground, places to or a hotel? Good pubs near the ground and places to stay."
Well, it depends
Sounds
what you mean by
obvious.
good beer or good atmosphere. I think obviously
Well, a combination of both then, really, because the beer's not great in Excelsior. to
no,
be
it's
honest,
not,
is it?
but it's where a lot of people go, and I think certainly towards the end of last season, it was absolutely rocking in there.
So I think for atmosphere, you go to the Excelsior, and for beer,
Yeah.
maybe the number
Brew
10.
House or the Bloomfield Brew House. That's some quite good beers on, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah,
as
and there's
well?
a couple of new ones opening in town. I think there's one on Bonny Street open, which is
There's the Blue
got some
Room.
decent real ale.
Is it the old
former mayor?
What was
number? Is it called number?
the Pump and
30?
Truncheon? The old Pump and
Is that what it
Truncheon,
is now?
I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
What's the Blue Room called now? Is it still called the Blue Room?
It's called the Brew Room.
The Brew Rooms.
Yeah.
that's,
1887.
that's obviously where Blackpool was formed. So, Mr. Tower Power 99. Jordan, sorry, I think get yourself down there. Right, Tower Power 99 says.
And of course, you can stay now. If you're going to stay over, you can stay in the BFC hotel.
Absolutely, we will be doing
Yeah, it's
packages.
now not apply any more compliance. Not up anymore. It's not a thing anymore. Is it?
No,
But,
no.
yeah, complete
Correct.
Compliance. Right, Tower Power says.
And if you've got any complaints, Jordan, it's Jordan, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you've got any complaints, Jordan, then address them to Miss C. Seddon, care of Blackpool Football Club, Seasiders Way.
It won't have any complaints.
Yeah, tightly run ship, won't it,
It will
Christine?
indeed.
Right. Are there any plans for the Squires to get training ground short-term ones,
Yes.
or is it going to be our long-term training base? Yeah.
No,
that's-
no. What I was saying about the short term is that we've clearly got to make some short term provision for the players, because at the moment they turn up in the cars, or if they come in on the minibus, and there's basically no facilities there whatsoever, and it's literally pull them into the car park and go straight onto the pitch. So that's completely unacceptable. Without specifying what that will be at the moment, because Simon needs to have his input in relation to what we've identified. I'd like to think that maybe not when they first turn back up to pre-season training, but most certainly hopefully by the time they get back from Scotland, we've got something in place for them. If not, it'll be in hand most certainly. But in the short, it's just a case of how quickly, we've got to deal with planning issues and things like that. It's a question of how quickly we can deliver what we've identified, assuming Simon's happy with it.
You told me in the pub last night this planning permission's expired as well for the
the position. I made some inquiries because we've got obviously there's a planning permission for the new facility that the Oystons were going to build, and
quotes facility.
which obviously to be whilst it might not have been ideal, it was of a certain standard, and that would have been perfectly adequate for what the players require at the moment. It had some classrooms in it, had a kitchen, etc., and changing rooms. And I think part of the reason that the existing buildings got demolished was so that it could be said that the development had started to preserve the planning, because you only have 3 years to start. But unfortunately, I think there was some, and doesn't matter going into the specifics, but there was some conditions attached to the planning which haven't been met, which means that it's lapsed. So that will be what slightly delays whatever we do down at Squires Gate. We've got to make sure that we've got planning in place.
So it'll be for this season. In the short term.
Listen. We know that the players cannot continue to train at Squires Gate beyond the short term without having some form of facility down there. It's just ridiculous to suggest that would happen, and it won't be happening.
Okay. David Underwood says, when you woke up this morning, how were you feeling? So I think... Nick?
Fine.
Tired.
Yeah, tired. I didn't get a good night's sleep either. No. Tired, not full, looking forward to work. You?
It's obviously it was busy yesterday, wasn't it? And I sort of dragged myself out of bed at 6:30 to take the dog out, and it was chucking it down. So I can't say I was full of the joys of spring first thing this morning.
So there you go, David. That's the reality of it.
Real life, unfortunately.
Oh, I think it means about Blackpool.
Very happy. Very happy.
Extremely.
Right, yeah. Life aside, very happy. Right, Martin Davis says, and it's quite a long one, this, after. It's one of the only things that Oystons did get right, in my opinion, but the Young Seasiders membership has now been scrapped. A Young Seasiders membership in years gone by gave children the connection to the club. Not only did they receive a member's card, but they also received birthday cards from the club, from their favourite player, but also a club shirt to wear, along with free entry into the games with a paying adult. The small outlay by the club could, I'm sure, be repaid tenfold in not only the short term, but over the coming years by regaining that connection to the next generation of fans coming through. I'm sure there's a question coming here. Is this something BST could champion with the club to get the same or similar scheme set up?
I think that we've got to let the dust settle and see where we are and whether they can introduce something partway through a season or wait till next season. I mean, I agree that the young people are where we need to target. Absolutely, we do. We've said all along we were worried that we were going to lose a generation, and that's why it was so heartening to see so many at the Southend game. But yeah, I mean, yes, I do think the youth thing is something we will definitely champion. But whether now is quite the right time, I think they've done what they can with the pricing and what they're offering at this moment in time. So I think we've just got to give it a bit of time.
The interim board at the end of the day had to adopt a relatively conservative with a small c policy in relation to pricing. So they had a difficult task between making sure that we traded in the black because we had to meet EFL requirements, so we didn't get the 12-point deduction, and secondly, don't find ourselves under some embargo or something because we're not trading in profit. So we had to do a responsible job. I mean, I've got to say, the scheme as it was excellent, but it was probably came at a cost to the club as distinct from making any money whatsoever because it was such a favourable deal. So something needs to be done. I mean, one of the things that we have done, which I think is massive, is make sure that we've got a sponsor that we're all proud of, and secondly, that the kids can wear, because whatever we did for the kids beforehand as a club, they couldn't wear the kit that the players played in, and that for me is a massive thing. And I'm sure, based on what I've heard so far, that Simon will have some plans of his own as regards how he wants to engage BFC with the young element of our support, because it is crucial. It's massive. I mean, when I was a football coach, going back to 2009, 2010, every 7 or 8 year old who's turned up to my training sessions had a Blackpool kit on. Literally every single one of them. And if you go round the similar clubs now and do that, that isn't the case. And it needs to become the case again. Now, how we achieve that might not necessarily be by giving shirts away. It might be by making the football club a place where they want to be, and secondly, engaging with them in schools, engaging with them in summer and half-term projects, and making them relate to Blackpool FC and the players that play for our club. There may be initiatives that come with that as well. That they, as Christine says, they're the things when the dust settles, things will be put in place, and they always were and always will be for a new owner.
Yep. Okay, so David Underwood says he's got another couple of quick ones. Probably one for you and Christine and Tim, this one. But slightly before my time. Mickey Walsh goal against Sunderland or Charlie Adam free kick at Wembley?
Were you at the Mickey Walsh one?
I wasn't, and I actually, I thought I shouldn't say this, but I actually went to boarding school when I was younger, and I was the only girl that liked football, and I had to sneak down to the common room to put Match of the Day on, and I actually watched it there and got into huge trouble because you young ladies weren't supposed to do that sort of thing.
Great story.
So I actually remember it, but it was on the telly.
It won the goal of the season, didn't it? My brother was at
Yeah.
that. He told me about it.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I think as a goal, I think Mickey Walsh's is better.
It's
Just
all the build-up, yeah.
Because of the whole move that builds up to it, and it was 2-2 at the time, I think, wasn't it? And it just
It's an iconic goal and iconic commentary, wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, how many times is your club going to get goal of the season and to be honest, at a time when 20 million people probably watch Match of the Day because it was just it was back in the days
was
of 2
the
channels,
programme.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's only 2, maybe 3 channels by that stage. I think BBC Two Mac just had started, but Match of the Day, everybody watched it, and that used to be as part of the intro, didn't it, for a long time.
Yeah, indeed.
And he always used to be on 101 great goals as well, and which used to be on
Remember that
the
DVD,
old.
yeah.
Well, doing it in DVD.
VCR.
VCR, wasn't it?
But David also has got another quick question. Quite like this one. Can you find out if Tango will be making a comeback? Nothing against the Bear, however, but I think Tango had more of an edge. I know what you're saying, Nick.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Tango had more of an edge.
It would be quite funny.
Used to sing Tango, give us a song, Tango, Tango. In that tight Vox kit.
Get it on the
It was far too small, wasn't it?
yeah. Get it on the agenda, Tim, for the first
That's
meeting.
how- that's the most-
First question. Never mind the training ground.
When's Tango coming back in that dossy gorilla kit?
That's it. We've got to get our priorities right, haven't we? It'll be top of the list for the next board meeting.
Just do it for a laugh, Tim. Go on, I dare you. I want to hear some audio recording of it as well. What?
Get out.
Does anyone know who Tango actually was?
They always just claim it was Tony Diamond, didn't they? Because he went missing for that long, trying to work out where he was.
Yeah, listeners, if anyone actually knows who Tango was, I'd be really interested to find out, because that's the next guest on this
I actually got a call off Bloomfield Bear. So
What was he saying? Don't let that gorilla come back.
he was trying to make sure that he kept his equity card on his Monopoly.
Tango v Bloomfield Bear in like sort of a cage match on the pitch. That'd be a good one. That'd sell a few tickets.
It was like, you remember?
Half-time entertainment.
Was it
A
Chaddy?
fight to the death.
Who did Chaddy the Owl fight when they? There was a famous fight between two mascots.
Yeah, there's
wasn't
been a
there?
few, hasn't there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mascot fights,
They
brilliant.
used to do mascot races as well.
Half-time
Didn't they?
entertainment, mascot fights, yeah.
This could be BST's input into the
Yeah.
its new
Put it to the
half-time
vote.
thing, yeah.
This will get the kids to the games.
Yeah.
You joked him, but it actually would. They'd love it.
It's like it's combining
suspended.
WWF and the mascots, isn't it?
We're onto something here.
I
Onto
think you're
something. Pour me another drink, Tim, while I'm reading this next one out, will you? Right, Ryan Mayer. Another good one. Will there be a press conference with Simon Sadler where he talks about the plans for the club and investment in the training ground? Let's not talk about the training ground again. And the stadium. So, any of you two, is there going to be a press conference? I presume there will be at some point.
He's coming over this summer. We're not quite sure exactly when yet. When I spoke to him yesterday and spoke to him today, he confirmed he would be over, and I'd say it's inevitable that there's a press conference when he comes over. I would be gobsmacked if there wasn't.
Harry says concerning on the pitch, is the aim this season to comfortably finish mid-table or try and sneak into a playoffs? Don't think anyone can answer that really, can they?
We need to see
Not
what happens
really.
over the
I
summer.
mean,
don't we?
no one sets out of a season to finish
we
mid-table, do they?
No, aim for the stars. You might
We have got
this
breaking news. We've signed another player.
Go on.
Ryan Edwards from Plymouth, defender.
All right, that ties in with that Alan Nixon saying that there's a signing on its way.
Richard Cook says, what's the biggest challenge facing the new chairman?
Facing Michael, we're talking about there, presumably, with the new chairman.
Is he a new chairman or is he the chairman?
He's the chairman at the moment.
So will Simon be the chairman, or will he be the owner, or how does these things?
Well, I would hazard a guess. Well, I don't. The short answer is I don't know, but I would hazard a guess that whilst Michael is here, he will remain as executive chairman.
I think his biggest challenge is keeping his job. Now there's a new owner in.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, to a certain degree, everybody's
That'd be my biggest challenge.
everybody's on trial, aren't they? Everybody's on trial.
Yeah.
I think from my dealings with Michael and with Ben up to this point, they're very, very, and Christine obviously can testify to this as well from her dealings. They're very, very impressive people, and I'll be quite surprised if Simon isn't equally as impressed with them as well when he sits down and sees what they've been doing and sees what their plans are and what their suggestions are. But that's their conversations for them to have.
Yeah.
Jonathan says yesterday was massive, but I think the fans need to realise Rome wasn't built in a day. We're not suddenly going to spend millions and go up as champions. What would you say Sadler's main priority is sorting out the mess the Oystons have left? Christine, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, well, there is a lot of investment needed, and even wandering around from the outside, you can see that. But there's lots and lots of plans, lots of projects to start. It's just in what order and how much investment he's going to make, and like Tim alluded to earlier, I think it is going to be measured, the way that he does this.
Not measured progress, though.
Measured progress. It will be progress. So yeah, let's see what happens, but it's all good. It's all good. We just need to be patient.
Yeah, I think that's right. Gary Ford, first of all, well done all. Fantastic news. Tim, we hear you have been a big part in bringing the club back. Has he said to you what his main plans are for the club? Thanks again. Exciting times ahead. So he's probably not dished out. He's not got time to sort of say anything.
Nothing, not specifics, but just that he's here for the long. My understanding is he's here for the long term, and he wants to bring success to Blackpool. How individuals define success is ultimately up to them. I would say success would involve us competing at the best level we can realistically compete at. I'd like to think, and I think most of us like to think, that we're a championship club in waiting, and with the right investment and with the right backing, both on and off the pitch. From us, Holloway. I listened to the Holloway audio, which Mark Spedding sent me, and Holloway spoke again and again about the positive input that we as fans provided to his team, where they never felt under pressure. They never felt that they were scared to make a mistake. And I think we underestimate the power that we have as fans to help our club get where we get to. And he just said that. He just said that my players went out without fear every single game because they weren't. That's why Charlie Adam was so successful here and wasn't.
Being brilliant at football was also another reason.
Well, it does, but it means that he never got criticised for making a long ball that maybe didn't find a player, where perhaps at some other clubs there'd be like moans when that happens. So then it makes you think, do I do it the next time? But if you do it 3 or 4 times and it comes off once, that's all it needs to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so just that's just as an example to say, you've got to allow the footballers to express themselves, and I think we were very, very good at just giving unconditional support between that sort of 2007 to 2011-12 period. It was just it didn't matter whether we were 6-0 down or 6-0 up. The level of support seemed to be pretty much the same, and I think that's where we can give our input next year and make, it's a bit of a cliche, but try and make Bloomfield a bit of a fortress, because I know particularly more so than Southend. I thought the Fleetwood game, the support that came from the north, the noise was very, very impressive. Because of course Southend was always going to be impressive because it was packed ground, wasn't it? But for a 10,000 crowd, I thought the atmosphere was superb. And I'd like us to think we can do that every game next season.
We've not talked about that Fleetwood game actually, have we? So we've not been on air since. Great, wasn't it?
But just going back to the atmosphere, I can remember when we were in the Championship and we played Wolves at home and beat them, and Mick McCarthy said the atmosphere the Wolves players picked up on it. You know, it was it made such a difference because it was absolutely rocking them, wasn't it? You know, every game, and it, like Tim says, we can make a massive difference next year. We've got to be patient, you know, with the team, but we can make a massive difference.
We can. This psychological side of football is actually very important, and I think that's again contributed to why they were worse at home after the fans after we went back at the end of last season. Because I mean, I jokingly said I hope they don't get stage fright, but actually they've been used to playing in a mausoleum with absolutely no pressure on them whatsoever, and then suddenly there's these huge expectations. Not necessarily that we were saying, oh, you've got to win, but just because it was such an occasion and the fans are back, it must have been a lot of pressure.
What the hell's going on
pressure.
here? Yeah.
What's all
Fans?
this noise?
What are they? No tartan blankets everywhere and flask. Favourite one. Right, David Reedy says he's put after the tram painting and renovation. Are there plans in future to keep the volunteers going in some capacity? Probably one for you, Christine.
Yes.
I don't think there's been any tram painting, has there? I think that's a typo.
Okay, no, it's not a typo because we have, we had the Blackpool tram a few years ago, and we've been offered it again, and we've just put out for a request for volunteers to help. However, the council have just pulled it because apparently that area is needed for something else, so there isn't going to be a tram.
Was
so
it the one that was
heard it here first?
Was it the one that was opposite the pleasure beach?
That's the one. Yeah. So we were going to do it all up again, like the Blackpool tram and a bit of advertising and stuff, and it was all systems go. But they've literally just told us that.
Why?
I don't know. There's some plans for that area, so
because it's effective in like a siding, isn't it, off the main tram route? It's where they can. And it'd been something else for the last couple of years, hadn't it?
Yeah, some other
been repainted.
Charity or something's had it.
I do think, though, I know there's been a little bit of criticism about the use of volunteers, but most certainly in those first 2 weeks, they were we couldn't have managed without them. And they've been at the training ground since and just help the ground staff down there just make it presentable, because the best will in the world, there's only so much they can do, particularly when they're going up and down with the mower manually. And, the short answer is we don't know about those volunteers, but the people who are actually engaging it are enjoying it. And if they are enjoying it and there's projects to do and they want to do them, then I'm not one for saying don't.
Same here. It's very therapeutic actually, and it really did help people to reconnect with the club. And I have to say that there are lots of other football clubs that have people who volunteer to do stuff. It's not actually that unusual.
It's actually quite alien to us and us as fans to being able to just have that option to go and help the club, because we all want to, don't we? But with the previous regime, they just weren't interested, were they, in anything?
Nope.
I remember in the early days of this podcast, I think we were only going about 6 months, and I wrote to Matt Williams and I said, can I come in and interview yourself and Carl and perhaps one of the players? And they said, no, you're not classed as an official media partner.
You get that sorted, Tim.
Well, we can look at it. I know. Obviously, the club
We'll have a job as well.
Yeah, we've got Lee doing a bit at the moment, which obviously he's doing in his own time, which is great. But all around the world, you see fans helping the clubs, whether it's in the old days shoveling snow off the pitches.
Yep.
Taking it to one extreme. I went over to one of my trips to Germany a few weeks ago, and I saw Union Berlin play. Actually, the guy who did the Safe Standing Roadshow Sports Union Berlin, and I met him up there for lunch. And
Ian Darsh was his name.
John Darsh.
John Darsh. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
And of course, it's expanding massively at the moment because there's I won't call it a loophole, but they've changed the rules. So if you don't have the seat locked in place, you can have safe standing. Effectively, have safe standing. The seat just has to be on a spring. So it's not locked, so you can sit down if you want. The fact is you don't. Tottenham were the first to do it. And Wolves have
Tottenham done it then?
Tottenham done it. The whole of that north, I think it's their north stand, isn't it? Is effectively safe standing, and they all stand.
That'd be a great plan for the East, wouldn't it, going forward?
Yeah, well, there's all, we had a good chat while we were over there, but what I was going to say was that taking it to one extreme, the Union Berlin, who he supports, just got up into the Bundesliga, the A, for the first time. The fans there built the ground. And there's a fantastic YouTube that Copper 90 do, where if you watch that,
It's good.
and they literally, and the other thing, when they were short of money, they all went, because in Germany they pay you to give a blood transfusion, and they all went and had blood transfusions and donated the proceeds to the club. So they effectively bled for the club. So it's like,
Brilliant.
but it's
People
like,
would though, wouldn't
but
they?
it's like in there, it's now like in folklore that they did that.
That's brilliant.
And that's what, it's things like that that make your club.
Yeah.
And this is why when these volunteers turn up and they want to clean the seats as we did, and everybody laughs when I say you can't use a power hose because it leaks through to the offices. Well, it's true. So they had to be hand washed, and it took a week with a whole team of volunteers. So, but that will go down in folklore, and you say, well, I did that, and people talk about it for years, and that's what helps people
good.
reconnect. It's brilliant for me, and so I just don't see a point in criticising it. Don't want to do it, don't do it. But
It's not the club are not taking advantage of anybody here
No.
at all. It's all voluntary.
it's a
Definitely.
case of BST saying, can we, because BST have been organised, haven't they? Tony particularly. It's going and say, can we go and do that? Can we go and do it? It's not us, not the football club saying, will you do that? It's the other way around. So
It's such a refreshing change.
as long as it's positive, it's the important thing, And there's, I'm looking at. I walked around the stadium the other day, and maybe there's like a lot of weeds. I mean, it's like the same in my office. There's a lot of weeds come because of all the rain. There's a lot of weeds around at the moment. Maybe before the start of the season, that's something we can look at. There's things that have to be done professionally.
Well, the community thing, before the Southend game, at Grange Park, there's this hub there that they have young people doing gardening and things. So they came and did all the planters outside the club. And again, it was just bringing people together. So, what's not to like? It's great.
As long as the football club give back as well, I think that's the important thing, and don't just take. So hopefully as we move forward on a community level, we'll be giving plenty back. The community trust is a beacon on the Foul Coast for what should be done in relation to community engagement. That has always been the case, to be fair, but they've not been able to showcase things as well as they might wanted to because of the boycott. Now they can. Now they can work with BST. Now they can get out there and really show what they can do. So the football club gives plenty, and if people want to give something back, that's fantastic.
I think the club's now totally open to anyone who wants to come down and help in any way or get involved. They can now, can't they? Whereas in the past, it was just a complete non-starter. Ooh, we've got a ghost coming in. So in. Get out. We don't want you anymore. They wanted you in the first place. Right, swiftly moving on. The door opened then for anyone not on the video feed then.
All on
It's
its
sort of
own.
strangely opened itself, didn't it? Right, where were we? Stephen Smith. I wonder if it's the Steve Smith. What vision has Simon shared with you on Blackpool's future? What does he see the club looking like in 12 months' time and beyond? Has he shared any vision?
Not to the specific of 12 months. I mean, I'm sort of repeating myself a little bit, but I think he would hopefully see us where we see us wanting to be, which is as a strong championship club, maybe with the aspirations every now and again of having a little sojourn into the Premiership.
A what?
Another one. Sojourn. I'm getting a bit.
Are you familiar with that term?
I am, yes.
I'm getting a bit tonight. So,
right, where's that book again? Actually, I'm physically going to get a book and write all these in. Watch out.
I did that one on purpose. So, but going back to what I said before, he's here for the long term. He very much sees the club want to be at the heart of the community. He's very, very focused on youth, and he won't be doing the quick fixes. And I think that that just said what I said before. That's what we need. We need a long term project because that's what it is.
We know what happened when the last sort of part owner said, "I've got a 5-year plan," didn't he? What was it for Premier League?
Happening 4.
Yeah. So let's
A
hope
lot to live up to.
Yeah, if we're not in the Premier League in 4 years, Simon, we'll be getting the Sadler out banner. We've got a few banners still kicking around, haven't we? So, only joking. Joe H says, is there any way you can encourage the board owner to publish and share more information about the demo and the trading ground? I've gone through that. Tom, this is short but sweet. What is Sadler's net worth? I'm sure he's not going to divulge that, is he?
He's not divulged that to
I'm
me.
sure
either.
you wouldn't either if he
No.
told you. Right, wrapping up now. Ian says, has Simon Sadler paid for the club outright? Brackets, out of his own savings or by way of a loan mortgage? Again, I don't think he's going to divulge that, is he?
No, I don't think there's mortgages on the stadiums or anything. I'm not aware of them. But listen, the short answer is don't know.
Out of his own savings. And few £1 million notes in his piggy bank. And Ian finally says, has Bellecon's debt been paid out in full? If not, how much is owed and who is the debtor? I think we know who the debtor is, don't we?
Well, there's 3 debtors, and we don't know the specific amounts still owed, but it's still a significant sum. There's obviously other assets to be sold. There's the Travelodge, I think, is in the process of being sold. But I know a couple of people have said we should have tried to keep the Travelodge because of the income stream, but unless you built it yourself, I said this at the BST meeting, unless you built it yourself, you're actually going to pay full market value for it. So if you're paying full market value for it, it's not quite the bargain that it might first appear, and it's not quite as important as it might first appear. But to be honest, what happens now in relation to Valeri enforcing his debt, I really don't care.
Yeah, same. Well, obviously, we want Valeri to get all his dough back,
well,
plus more, don't we?
But it's not. It's for us. The only thing, and the way that judgment was structured, when the receiver was appointed, was to make sure the football club was sold effectively. To make sure the football club was sold first, and that's what's happened, and that's what's important. We don't have to worry about is it going to be paid off by the sale of Windite or sale of something else. So what goes on from here? I'm not saying I will not keep an eye on what goes on and a passing interest, but it's not what we're about now. We're going in a different direction, and that different direction is a positive direction, not looking back about what has happened in the past. Yes, I hope Valeri gets his money, but that's between him and Owen and the other defendants at the moment, not our concern.
And finally, won't it be good next season just to get back to what we set this podcast up originally, was just to talk about football? And I mean, it feels like a long, long time since we have.
Well, it has been, yeah.
I don't know where all the time I've been on it that we ever have.
I don't think we have actually.
Well, we stopped doing it for a while because there was nothing to talk about, because it becomes depressing, doesn't it? Because all you're talking about is what was going on. You weren't talking about match reviews, we hadn't been, and there might not have been any news. If you're between a court case, it's kind of like, well, until the next one comes, there isn't any news, and it just becomes a bit depressing, doesn't it?
I think my first one ever was, if I've got it wrong, when you used to live up in South Shore, was when myself and Steve Smith had just come back from Latvia for the first time.
Was that your first one? Was it?
I think it was my first one.
Steve was quite good on it, wasn't he?
We went on the Sunday night. We used to do them on Sunday nights.
That's
didn't
right.
we?
Yeah.
I think that was my first one, and then you've not been able to get rid of me since.
Christine's in your seat now, anyway.
I'll be sub next week.
I actually had to sub Rob. He took it quite well, though. So actually, a bit of a plug for Rob there. There's his, again, for those in the videos, I've got his 3 of his artwork pieces that I've purchased. Absolutely brilliant. The end game one, superb. So, Rob, if you want to flog a few of those via our website, feel free to do. Yeah, it's brilliant. So I always pick out something new out of that every time. What was that? We spotted Neil Holden there. What is it, Nick? What man do this? What was it?
Oh, it was when he was sat on the coach and one of the Arsenal players had either gone on his Instagram or Facebook saying, "Why am I doing this?"
Why am I doing this?
It kind of went viral.
Mahatma Holden.
It's kind of top of a crane that he's drawn in. Brilliant. So just very quickly, there's very few things before we wrap up. Neil Holden and the Muckers, obviously, this superb, epic adventure that they've been doing. Christine, have you been following it at all on Facebook?
I have indeed, yeah. I just think it's amazing what they've done. I don't know whether they've fully comprehended how difficult this was going to be when they decided to do it. But every credit to them. I think they've just been brilliant.
What about cycling around all 92 league clubs next time?
Oh, crikey, they've got the bug now.
I didn't realise they were coming back as well. I just thought they were going to go to Paris and stick all the bikes on a plane or a bag and a ship and come back, but they've come back, haven't they?
And listen, one thing that has to be said, they've done it in the most appalling weather
Well,
I was
conditions.
just going to
Yeah.
say,
Shocking,
it's
isn't
not
it?
stopped raining, has it?
No.
No,
Which makes it doubly hard, isn't it? Because it's just
it does.
You're
just
just
saps you
drenched
around.
all
Yeah,
day. And
yeah, absolutely brilliant effort. Brilliant.
I mean, that
effort.
one we did to Middlesbrough. What was that? That was over 2.5 days, was it? And that was hard enough. And we got the weather, didn't we? We had like a tailwind and no rain, and
But you look at the videos, and it's just constantly, you know, it's been pouring down, and they've had to do some massive days, and then it's getting up the next day again, isn't
And
it?
doing it,
And,
yeah.
and knowing you've got to do it again, and looking out the window and seeing that wind and rain, and absolutely fantastic
Amazing.
effort.
has John just been driving the support van? Or has he been doing any cycling?
No, he went over halfway through it. I think they've kind of split it between a few of them. One of the other lads did the first few days.
And then they sort of rotate it. Didn't
Yeah.
they? That's the only way to do it, really. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
but it's absolutely brilliant effort.
Yeah, well
Brilliant
done,
effort.
lads. And then also Simon obviously made the donation to take them over the £5,000 barrier. I mean, what a great gesture that was.
It was.
Absolutely fantastic.
I'd
yeah.
sent him the link on Wednesday and said, "Oh, if you fancy making a donation, even if it's anonymous,
Yeah.
just to give him a bit of a lift, because they were desperate to get over that 5,000." And then I saw what he did, and obviously really resonated in it because it tied in with, the amount that was paid tied in with the exact date, and I think it just set the right tone for yesterday. I thought it was a fantastic gesture. We talked about the symbolism of cleaning the seats before. It was symbolic that amount was paid as we start a new era under new owners, and it's given them a massive boost, I'm sure. I think they're up around heading towards 7,000 now, and I think they've got match funding. I don't know if it's for the whole amount, but I think they've got some match funding from a bank.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
it really is.
I'm
Got to
pleased.
say they've when they told me what they were going to do, I thought no chance.
No,
Proved you
it's-
wrong, Tim.
They did.
Proved you
I'm
wrong.
happy to eat. I might eat my hat, and I've compensated them appropriately.
But it shows again, doesn't it, what amazing fans Blackpool fans are, and all the different skills and the different ways we have of supporting the club and doing stuff. But so much has come out, the artists like Rob Purden. You look at Lee Morton, who was 6 stars, and the alternative shirt, and so many of us doing so many different things. You guys doing this, of course. We have very talented and committed fans, and that's why it's important, of course, that we don't fall out amongst ourselves, and we're all together. There's more that unites us than divides us.
Well, again, the first substantial donation came from BST, didn't it? Which
Yes, it
was
did,
important, and I think it's we can have our sport on social
Yeah.
media sometimes and rib each other, but and it's the same with everybody. Whatever side of the argument you're on during the boycott, we are all Blackpool fans, and we're going to go forward together. And if we don't go forward together, then we're not going to be as strong, are we? We're not going to be as effective as we can be. So yeah, I tell you what, I'm going to make sure I'm down there at 3:00 tomorrow. I think they're coming in at 3:00 on the comedy carpet, I think. So
You can actually meet them at Lytham, can't you? If anyone wants to kind of join them and ride your bikes on the way in.
I think they're going to post various things tomorrow. I think you can join them at Manchester, Preston, Lytham, or anywhere along the route, effectively, and ride in with them if that's.
So what time are they due to come in again?
3:00. 3:00. But I think if you keep an eye on their Twitter and Facebook tomorrow, they're going to post times. They're going to get to various locations. I don't know where they're meeting in Preston. I suspect they'll be outside.
The Ribble Pilot, I think, was.
I thought they might be outside Deepdale.
That'd be brilliant. In fact, lads, if you're listening, get yourselves to Deepdale. Never mind the Ribble Pilot.
Did you see the video where they had to, I think it was yesterday or the day
Oh,
before,
this is brilliant.
part of the route went down a road called North End Road, and they refused to cycle down it and went 4 miles longer
You're kidding, really?
to avoid going down North End Road. Absolutely
that.
fantastic.
So I think they said the meeting in Lytham at about 2:00. I might actually go down there. I've actually got an e-bike, so I might go down there. So
You can't do
I'll
that.
put myself out, lads. I'll join you for this final slog. It's an e-mountain bike, so it's not like a normal bike. But yeah, if anyone listening to this, I think it'd be a great gesture. If you're not doing anything tomorrow, get your bikes and go and meet them, and we should all cycle in with them and cheer them home. And on that note, God, this is a marathon. An hour and a half. Where's an hour and a half? That's gone really quick. Apparently, it's 90 minutes. How ironic.
Exactly.
Wow.
But longest show ever.
No extra time then.
Have we got any more booze left?
We've run
Right,
out.
go and get the
haven't
vodka. And we'll do another 30 minutes. I think we'll knock it on the head there. But yeah, that longest show ever. But I think it kind of needed to be done, didn't it? Very cathartic. Is that the word?
Hey, there
You
you
two.
go. You've
Hey,
been
I'm
reading
learning.
your book.
Right, so
Just before we sign off, a toast to Blackpool Football Club.
Absolutely.
It's a Blackpool Football
and
Club.
all who may sail in her can we reach? Tim, there you go. So, right, so thanks for listening, everyone. I know it's been a slog, but had to be done. So thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening. Thanks to everyone in the stream. Thanks, Christine, for coming on. Thanks,
for
Nick.
inviting me.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Tim,
Thank you.
Mr. Advisor, and thank you for downloading. Thanks for listening. And in to our We're Up the Pool.
Up the pool.
Oh.
There's Jazz.
It does when you got an earring that's sticking inside.
Right, there's the live stream still going. Someone give me a wave. The camera's there, isn't it?
I'm off shot.
Oh, it was good that. It was like an hour and a half. It really quick, didn't it? Yeah. Right. Tell Tim I took his advice and went to Barnsley away. Never listening to him again. I think next time it's good just to have someone sitting there answering the questions, you know, like Tangerine. The new Albert is a great shout these days for pre-match pub. Yeah, it's been done out, hasn't it?
To be munching that, don't you?
Yeah.
We need our own at Blackpool as well.
Tango's waiting for the ownership situation to be sorted before returning. His name was Andrew.
His name was Andrew, was it?
Yeah, the muckers dealt with hard weather, but they did deal with the coffin march blowing out of my arse from that weather. And I remember that.
I saw the video of the coffee march not that long ago, actually. Because I remember spending the night.